This is Fuel.
Fuel for thought.
Fuel injected.
Fuel for your business.
Jet fuel.
Hello new business fans, and welcome to the new format video edition of the Fuel podcast, brought to you in association with The Advertist. New business tools, insight and data for creative communications agencies, and I'm your host, a Smith called Keith. Now recently I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing the extraordinarily talented Ted Rubin, and if you don't know Ted, he's one of the most followed CMOs on Twitter according to Social Media Marketing Magazine. He's one of the most interesting CMOs on Twitter according to Say Media. He's number 13 on the Forbes top 50 social media power influencers, and he's number 2 on the lead tail list of the top 25 people most mentioned by digital marketers. So he knows his stuff. So how does he do it? How does he leverage his influencer power to further his business objectives? In this show, Ted shares some of his secrets that are going to help you supercharge your sales strategies. He also shows off a very impressive collection of hats. Before we join our talk with Ted, let's get you warmed up with a word or two from the master of new business one-liners, Jeremy Davis.
I've mentioned previously that my what 3 words answer would be glass half full. But on the flip side of the coin, it occurs to me that there are 3 words that in the context of new business development drive me absolutely balmy with rage. And those 3 words are, how are you? Now, I've worked in business development for 20 years, and in all that time I have never asked a total stranger how they were. It's not that I'm uncaring, you understand. In fact, I generally hope that my prospects are very well, feeling pretty darn chipper all the same, thanks very much. It'll make my job a lot easier, and probably make them more inclined both to chat and to consider the product or service that I'm offering. But to me it just feels so false. It's the new business equivalent of have a nice day. One of the most important things about contacting a cold prospect is to come straight to the point. And it's pretty obvious that no matter how nice a person you are, the prospect is unlikely to think that you are merely calling with a polite inquiry as to his or her health. Nor that you don't want anything specific, probably to do with the exchange of money. I suppose there is a minute possibility the prospect might assume that you are randomly calling total strangers to check on their well-being, and that there is nothing sinister or creepy about this, but marketers are a cynical bunch, so I think that's unlikely. As an icebreaker, how are you is spectacularly pointless. I suppose technically it is an open question, but not one that's likely to generate much information of value in the sales cycle. In most cases, there will only be 3 possible answers: good, middling, or not great. Actually, that's not true, is it? The most common answer you'll receive is busy, which is really just virtue signaling on the part of the prospect, but has the effect of putting you immediately on the back foot, or as the sales training gurus might put it, ceding any power you might have in the seller-prospect relationship. Because, as we all know, being busy is the ultimate status symbol in the world of work, to be worn as a badge of honour at all times. No respectable prospect is ever having a quiet day, enjoying a bit of downtime after getting a big project or deadline off their desk, or having a mid-morning cup of coffee. Admitting you're not busy at work is a big taboo in business, akin to confessing you quite like working from home, or that you prefer Microsoft Office to Apple's latest OS. It's just not done, unless you're happy to be ostracised by your colleagues, mocked by the boss, and generally made to feel like the kid who's picked last in the playground of football. Of course, the people who do say, how are you, in the course of a sales call, would no doubt say that building rapport with your prospect is important in forming a relationship, and that how are you is the ultimate rapport-building question, because you're effectively giving them a chance to tell you about anything they want, which may not be an opportunity they get too often in the course of an average working day. To which I say, that's fine, but be honest about it. I'm sure there are some prospects out there that need to get something off their chest, but why not say to them at the outset, look, I assume you would like me to come straight to the point, but I would like to give you the opportunity of engaging in a few minutes of awkward and pointless small talk before we get to the bit where I try to sell you something. How does that sound? At least then we'd all know where we stood and be much the better for it. The thing about having a glass half full, you see, is that you just don't have room for empty gestures.
Thank you, Jeremy. And you'll be hearing a lot more from him over the next few weeks and months, so stay tuned. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we put out a new video, which we reckon is going to be about every 2 weeks. You can also listen to the Fuel Podcast at www.thefuelpodcast.com, and there's lots of extras there and background to all our guests as well. But for now, let's join me talking to Ted Rubin on the Fuel Podcast, The Emotional Connection, How Networking Drives Sales. Now, my guest this week surely qualifies as one of the most influential B2B marketers to have appeared on the show. This is Fuel's first TED Talk. Since 2009, Ted Rubin has been, in his own words, evangelizing on the value of creating sustainable digital business networks through the concept of return on relationship. The value generated by a person or brand due to nurturing a relationship, the currency of loyalty, recommendations, and sharing. The concept is so powerful that it was turned into a book of the same name that he co-wrote with author, speaker, and social media strategist Catherine Rose, a book I'm now on a waitlist for because it's sold out and has been for a while now. And it's not his only book. Another one of his that I would urge listeners to read is The Age of Influence, Selling to the Digitally Connected Consumer. And we'll cover some of the main points in the show. And of course, we'll provide links to buy it on Amazon in the show notes at fuelpodcast.com. Now, Ted has got some impressive creds. He's worked alongside Seth Godin at Yoyodyne before it was acquired by Yahoo in 1998. He's been CMO and marketing point man for several successfully heavily funded .coms. He spent the last 10 years perfecting the art of social marketing with the Open Sky Advisory Board. Open Sky is the e-commerce startup that was acquired by Alibaba in 2018. He was Chief Social Media Marketing Officer at Collective Bias, the consumer recommendation and endorsement tech firm, and the list goes on and on. He's been listed in the top 20 Forbes social media power influencers and number 2 on the lead tail list of the top 25 people most mentioned by digital marketers. A title involving the words cheese and big spring to mind. If you want a full rundown of Ted's stellar career history, it's better to look him up on LinkedIn. What we're here to do is to provide some enlightenment because Ted is an expert on relationship building. And in our world of new business, building relationships is sales 101. But given the fact that most of our business is now conducted online, it's a new paradigm and it gives Ted's book a new lease on life, because if ever there was a moment for a book like this, it's now. So thank you for coming on the show, Ted. I've been looking forward to this for a long, long time.
My pleasure, Keith. So happy to be here. And I'm really glad that we connected via Ian.
Yes.
And you know, Ian Truscott's one of the best guys I know. I loved working with him. And again, when I noticed your comment on LinkedIn and I knew you were connected to Ian, I knew we had to talk.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, Ian's a fantastic guy, and yeah, big shout out to him for connecting us in the first place. But so how are you doing anyway? Are you keeping fit and well?
I'm doing great. I mean, look, it's been a challenging time for everybody, very much so for me, as far as I was before the pandemic hit. I was used to traveling, you know, monthly, very often weekly. I live here in South Florida, which I love. I moved here in 2016, but truth be told, I never spent this much time here. And although I love being here, it gets damn hot here over the summer. And last summer was the first summer I spent the whole summer here. And, you know, this kind of speaks to things we experience, but things we make commentary on without actually experiencing ourselves. So I used to say to people, what are you talking about? It's not that bad here in the summer, because I was never here for more than 3 to 4 days at a time. You know, I'd come back, I'd been running around, there'd be great, there'd be sunshine, there'd be heat. I'd feel like I was in a sauna, but you know, that's fun in the short term. Try being here for the whole damn summer. Now, again, I used to travel a lot. Also in the summers, I tend to go north. I missed that last summer. And then this summer, I can't really leave for about another month from now, just because of things that we've talked about that I'm involved in down here. So it's been, again, thank God, family is healthy, things are good. But like everybody else, things have been challenging. I mean, finding a new way to communicate with people, having less engagement and interaction, which I'm used to a lot of face-to-face interaction. Finding our way in this new world, seeing how is it going to affect us afterwards. Like, everyone says it's over. It's not over. It's not over, number one, because we still have to be careful. The pandemic's not really over. We have a new disease now we have to be thinking about, but more importantly, things have changed a bit. People are reacting differently. I mean, I don't know about you, but I went to my first gathering. It was not really a party, but a few people for a graduation at their home. Everybody was vaccinated, but it was weird. I was nervous getting ready to go. I mean, here's a guy, I walk into these things every minute, and all of a sudden I remember saying to somebody, do you feel the same way I do? It's kind of weird going out. So, and a lot of things I think are going to change going forward. I think people are going to be given a lot more leeway about where they work. I think the work environment, I think we've also realized that I believe there will be, of course, in-person events, but I don't think they'll be as prolific as they were before, because a lot of companies have realized their sales guys don't necessarily have to travel and run up multi-million-dollar budgets. They can close deals over the phone, over Zoom, by building relationships digitally, and again, via video and the way we're doing it right now. So that was a long answer to your short question. I apologize.
Well, I tell you what, it's always interesting to because I think that, having read a lot of the stuff that you put out there, I mean, you are a bit of a philosopher, and I think, that you do have, your words do carry some weight. And I mean, the sort of follow-up question to that was basically, I mean, what do you think is one of the most interesting things that you've learned about human nature from the pandemic?
Oh boy, I think I've learned, something I guess some of us have known for a long time, but that people don't want to hear the truth. Which is a sad part, is that it's hard to open your eyes. You want to believe what you want to believe, whether it comes to safety or it comes to what we need to do going forward. Look, it has a lot to do with a lot of things we live through every day: climate change, a society that's not as equal as we'd like it to be, without getting into specifics.
Sure.
In many different areas, the hatred that still exists around the world, in many different respects. I mean, I'm Jewish, and all of a sudden anti-Semitism is rising dramatically all over the world and in this country. So I think the pandemic opened up a lot of us to that, because we had the ability and time, to really look at things. I don't know if you've been through this, but I bet a lot of your audience has, where even in your own home, you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize that was there, because we're always running so much. We're in, we're out, we're traveling, we're jumping in and out of meetings. Even if you weren't a big traveler, you were in and out of your house, you'd run out. You wouldn't think twice about running to the store for something. And now all of a sudden we're taking it all in a little bit more about what's really going on in our surroundings. And we have more time to listen to some of the things that are happening. And I think in many ways, it's been an eye opener for a lot of people to really see what's going on around them. And I'm hoping it stays with us, that we still want to observe as much. We want to take that moment and step back, and this might lead into something that you'll ask me later, but you read a lot about people saying you're not growing, you're not succeeding if you're not stepping outside your comfort zone. Well, I want to tell you something. I've been spending my whole damn life looking for my freaking comfort zone. Okay. I've been stepping outside my comfort zone my whole freaking life, from the day I stepped away from my parents and went off on by myself, or started riding my bike around the neighborhood. I want to find my comfort zone. And I think some of what's happened here is it's given a lot of us a view into what really makes us happy.
Oh, well, that's very profound. I think you're right as well, because I think, it's given a chance for everybody. It's given everybody a chance to basically to look inwards a little bit more onto, the things that do really kind of make them happy. I mean, I know that from our perspective, the people at the Adventist, the other business we have, is that, that working from home is not a crime anymore, and it's actually can be quite good. And I think it's helped some people to adapt to a kind of a more healthy work-life balance. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. Now,
I want to make one point, because you did. I think that's really true from the from the employee side, but I also think from the business side, businesses have now, they had no choice. There was the opportunity to use all these tools before, but companies resisted it. And they've learned that many employees can actually be more productive, not taking that time to get to the office, to commute, to get settled when they get in. Like, people don't even realize, sometimes I hear people say, well, our employees only live 20 minutes away. Well, they've got to get ready. They've got to get dressed. They've got to leave the house. They've got to get in the car. They've got to drive. They've got to park. They've got to come in and get settled, get their coffee, get their thing. I think like the time, and then all of a sudden they live under the stress of, oh, my kid's game is starting at this time, or, oh my God, I need to jump out for this. And it's hard to do it. Whereas without someone looking over your shoulder every second, I found with the companies and people I work with, most have become way more productive and not less productive.
And I think, yeah, and I think that it shows that people can be accountable,
Yes.
that they can take responsibility.
Perfect
And
word. Yes.
that we don't need to micromanage people anymore. I think that's probably the one thing that's come through all this for me, from my perspective anyway. But
I'd agree.
I mean, onto things which, I mean, this is going to be I know this is going to be a great conversation. And but one thing I wanted to say in the last sort of 12 months is that I've been creating a new bucket list. And you actually made that list, because one of the things I wanted to do was, we mentioned Ian Truscott actually at the start of the show. He recommended that I read your book, Return on Relationship, and it's now on my list because I can't get hold of it. So and I know Ian has rated it extremely highly. But I mean, is there any chance that you'll be bringing out a sort of a new sort of first edition of the book? And before you answer that, I would say, if you do, I would put a new chapter in there that says, I told you so.
I think we discussed this in our pre-podcast call, and I said, wow, what a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. And then, of course, I got off the call and got involved in other things and forgot. So now I am going to make a note of that and think about doing something like that, or something, just a next chapter or a next book. I do have a new book coming out soon with my business partner, John Andrews, which he is actually the lead writer on, and I'm playing the role of Kathleen Rose, the secondary, called Retail Relevancy.
Okay.
So that will cover, I mean, it's more strictly about retail, but it also talks about the relationship aspect, and things like that. But
well, I've written you a post-it note now. Okay, so ROR re-release. All right, so perfect. There you go.
And I'll send you a PDF of Return on Relationship, so you have it.
Well, I mean, it's so relevant. This is the thing, and I think that it's something that I mean, obviously you didn't write it for these times, but it's incredible, isn't it, how things work in such a way that it does actually become a sort of just such a sort of a great piece of advice. Because, I mean, it's just it's everything that we should be doing. And obviously you didn't know there was going to be a pandemic, but I think it just goes to show you that you were very aware of the fact that this was all, we had the technology to be able to do this and the ability to be able to do these sorts of things. And it takes a pandemic maybe to shock everybody into that sort of action, but it's very, very relevant for, for where we are right now. So good for you. Well done.
Well, it's like I try to, you mentioned the basic return on relationship definition, but I always add that it's used to define and educate companies, brands, and most importantly, people about the importance of creating authentic connection, interaction, and engagement that has gone well beyond just face-to-face. And, you say how many years it's been, but adoption in any of these things is always so slow that, I'm not surprised that people are just beginning to embrace it.
There is actually, I think there is a definition of that, and I think it's the accordion effect. It's the same thing that happens in traffic when it backs up, and then it takes longer for the people at the back to actually drive forward than it does for the people at the front. And this is the same thing. I mean, you were obviously there at the time, and now it takes all that time for it to come up. So obviously, at some point in this show, we're going to talk about what you've got coming up, because I think that's very important. If you were able to see into the future that far, I think it will be very important for everybody to hear what you've got coming up. But I mean, I noted in the intro that I did for you that I mean, you've had a pretty spectacular career. I mean, you've picked companies that have got massive growth potential. You've made them kind of VC worthy. I mean, was this a deliberate strategy, or has it become like a business model for you? And I mean, if so, I mean, what do you look for in a company these days?
Well, first of all, I think you said something about new hats for new questions. So I just wanted to pull out another hat. And of course, if it's a new hat, we have to have glasses that go along with it. So, okay.
Oh
So
God, fantastic!
I will
You're
tell you,
answering this question in the style of a Cuban holidaymaker.
I will tell you that um, no, there was not a plan. And I recently wrote something about this, and it had to do with Father's Day and a message to my daughters. And I've written about in other instances, but it's very rare that any of us live out a plan that
No,
we plan from the beginning. This is what my career is going to be like. This is what I'm going to do. I mean, there are the few. The guy that said he wanted to be a doctor and he was going to go to med school and he wanted to be a plastic surgeon or a geneticist or something. But even those, it's very few people can look back at the age of 60 and say, I followed my plan. I mean,
right,
I would say very few people follow their 5-year plans. By the way, I'm not saying don't make them. I want to be clear about that. Not that I did, because I didn't. For me, it was there it is. It was no let up. It's that I believe in this whole concept that, there's no let up in life, whether it's working hard, evolving what you're doing, recreating yourself, being there for family, being there for yourself, finding, like I always say to people, no let up doesn't mean never taking a vacation. It means finding that time
right.
to take that time for yourself. But no, there was not a plan. And again, I'm not going to say this is certainly not the way I hope it is for everybody, but I've had to reinvent myself over and over again. I've had plans. They've executed to a certain point. They've hit a wall, or there's been a crash, or there's just been a change of heart. Again, and I've had to find myself a new way. And thank God I've managed to, and by the way, this goes towards how you feel about yourself. And it's something I'm working on. Talking to people or talking to someone that helps me with this is that, I didn't become exactly what I wanted to be, or I never seem to live up to my own standards. I never think I've accomplished enough, or I've done it right, or I could have been better, or I could have been somewhere else. But to me, what I know I am incredibly proud of is that every time I've hit a wall or had that crash or had some kind of dramatic change of heart for some reason, I've managed to find my way back. And
Right.
I've managed to find a direction and a passion. My overriding passion has always been friendship, family, being a dad, these kinds of things. But I've been able to find things that work for me, whether it's paying the bills, because look, I want to make sure there's a lot of gurus out there and we all know who they are, telling people, if you're not doing what you love, you're not doing it right. And, get sleep when you die and all this other kind of bullshit. And, never stay in a job that you don't love. Like, please, most of us live in the real world, which means we've got friends, we've got family, we got our own obligations, and the things we got to do because you got to do them. And
Yeah.
I remember having this conversation with my dad at one time after a business I had at a very early age skyrocketed and then went down. And he was trying to console me. And I said, Dad, listen, what I never have a worry about is that I'll always make a living. Always make a living. I've got my mouth. I've got my hustle. I know how to work hard. I'm not arrogant. I'll take any job. I mean, I've worked in between serious 6 to 7 figure careers. When they've crashed, I've worked in a friend's restaurant. I've worked in people's yards. As you know, we talked about it. I'm doing some work here in a building that I'm buying units in and renovating and restoring. I'm doing a lot of the work myself if it's work that I can do. Now, I'm not.
Right.
There's a lot of it I can't, but any of the just manual labor I'm doing. I always like to say, by the way, if you want to get in shape, gyms are great. And by the way, I'm addicted
picked, I mean, you've, okay, not picked, you've worked with people and with companies that have gone on to do some pretty spectacular stuff. I mean, most of us would be quite happy with just one of those events that's happened, but you seem to be you seem to have a knack for picking companies that are sort of, pre-capital, pre-funded, and getting them in shape for the thing to happen. I mean, that has to be a skill that you've learned from somewhere.
First of all, I'd say a lot of it's luck. Second of all, I'd say it's more about the people than about the company. So I kind of guide myself by, people I want to work with or work for, who I can learn from. Like I've said, I really believe it's about relationships. I try to never leave a job, a school, an organization without at least one new, very solid friendship that I then bring into the group of people I'm working with. And I like to say that a network gives you reach, and all these friends are networks, but that a community gives you power. And I create communities. I didn't understand this about myself for a long time. I always thought I was a networker. And one day somebody said to me, "You're not a networker. I mean, you are, but what you really are, your real power is that you're a community builder." In that I bring people together. I mean, all my good friends from all walks of life, they're all friends with each other, and they're friends beyond just my friendship. They communicate separately. They have their own friendships. And
Right.
like, I mean, every once in a while, two of my closest friends who I know rarely see each other, they'll say like, "Oh yeah, we're getting together next week in Raleigh." And I'm like, "Dude, you didn't tell me." They're like, "Well, you don't have to know about that. You'll know when you see the picture posted on social media, or that I just mentioned it to you." So I think that look, what I've learned is my gut always leads me in the right direction. And every time I go against my gut, I lose. And, remember, gut is a lot of things coming together. It's an expression that, if used, I think that's appropriately, it's part of your brain that you don't really know you're using. It's the part of your brain you do know you're using. It's emotions, which I think are important, but it's not emotions on its own. Because when I follow my emotions on their own, that can lead all of us into a bad direction sometimes, because it's very one-sided. But
Yeah.
when I meet people, I get a gut feeling about them. And don't get me wrong, I've made mistakes, and sometimes I'm wrong. And very often what I do is I open myself to other people's opinions. I allow my inner gut to be affected, and my judgment to be affected by advice from people that I trust. So I'm very open in sharing. I have a group of friends that they hear everything. I lay it out for them. I'm not afraid to hear their feedback. They're not angry if I don't take their advice. But I
Right.
think all of that comes together. And look, I've missed deals, and I've, just like everybody, I've been asked to be in things that ended up being a lot bigger than I thought they would be. I wouldn't say that the things I've been in are that huge, but I've been fortunate to be involved in some successful businesses. And I like to feel that in some way I played a part. And truth be told, I'm always better more towards the beginning. Because I'm a little more freewheeling. I'm not like, I am personally organized, but I don't always follow the rules. I like to say that my blog, everyone hears the URL, tedrubin.com, but it's called Straight Talk. So I speak my mind, which doesn't always work as well in a bigger organization. Once you start getting all your pieces in place, and there's many more employees, and there's many more rules. So I've just found myself in companies that, in a growth stage, I can add a lot. I can add my experience. I can add my gut. I have a way to connect with people. I can build community. And that's really the time when both Collective Bias, my business partner and I both left. It sold 3 years later. I mean, we both just left Photify. It was in trouble, same as Collective Bias was. Well, they weren't really in trouble. They were just very early and hadn't really broken out. Both of them we brought to a breaking out stage. And then, truth be told, we're gone because we're not great at the
Process stuff.
process and the soldiering and
Yeah.
things that you have to do when you start doing thought leadership, and you just have to find the things that work and then just charge through them. Then it's the same shit every day. And
Yes.
we tend to be not as good at that and get a little bored. So, I've been good at adding value to companies at those stages.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, it's funny, isn't it, that some people are there as almost like nitrous nitrous oxide for. I tell you what, Ted, if you pull out a wig, I'm going to collapse.
Well, this is a shout out to my younger daughter who is going into her third year at Harvard Law School, and I'm tremendously proud of her. People that know me know that I have a strained relationship with my daughters due to my ex and divorce and other things that are involved there. But they are the world to me, and I'm there for them no matter what. Always. I like to call myself, one of the hashtags I've used for years now is "This Dad Won't Quit." And, it's evolving into, kind of from a distance, the dad who will always love. But my pride is always out there. And again, Nikki, I'm so proud of you.
Oh, man, that's so cute. Well, I'm going to have to keep that bit in now, aren't I? Fantastic. Well, look, I mean, I wanted to talk to you about influencers, sort of bring the conversation around to influencers, because I read a recent article about a chap, I don't know whether you know him, called Ed Bernays, who's considered to be the godfather of public relations. But one of my recent guests on the show also credited him as the kind of original influencer marketing. And by the way, he was actually the nephew of Sigmund Freud. But get this story. This is fantastic. This is how he's been credited as the first ever influencer. In just before 1929, he had a client, which was the American Tobacco Company. And they wanted to persuade. Sounds like a hell of a brief for this time of for this stage. But the American Tobacco Company wanted to persuade more women to get to start smoking, and it was always considered a man's habit. And so you very rarely see women smoking on the street. So what Ed Bernays did was he actually he organized a photo shoot where a bunch of sort of air quotes feminists, friends of his, were on the street, and they were smoking not cigarettes, but they were called torches of freedom, which was an act of emancipation. But I mean, so it could be argued that influencer marketing is about as old as advertising, but given the fact that we're now in the sort of social and the sort of social media, digital media, and it's all having a renaissance now. I mean, what do you think it is about influencer marketing that just seems to be more powerful than just plain advertising these days?
Well, I think this whole word influencer has gone way, way beyond the value that it actually adds, or it kind of adds a connotation to it that I am not a huge believer in. So what I like to say is that everyone influences someone. Okay. Right. And that's always been the case. Sure. You've heard word of mouth marketing has been around since mouths, since words. I mean, your friend gets something, they get a new car, you see it, you go, wow, where'd you get that? That's really cool. Or there's a new hair dryer. There's whatever it happens to be. I like to say that most things that I buy that are anything more than just a tiny purchase, I call them, like, if it's a bigger purchase, I call them, like, I have my car guy, I have my tech guy, I have my fashion woman or guy, like, who I reach out to and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? Because I don't want to do all the research. I don't necessarily believe all the things that I read online, and all the reviews. And I reach out to that expert. And I think we all reach out to experts. We all get influenced. I mean, come on, you go to events, you go out, you see things, wow, that's a great jacket. Where'd you get it? And I like to say now, because things have expanded where we all get to share publicly so much, that welcome to the age of influence, where anyone can build an audience, affect change, advocate for brands, build relationships, and make a difference every day. So that's kind of the really cool part of it. Like, you can make a difference, you can affect change, you can get involved in politics. But the everyday stuff is that we're all sharing every day: the hat we're wearing, the shirt we're wearing, the necklace we're wearing, what we're doing. Oh, I'm out, look at my new boat. And truth be told, that's, to me, where the real influence is wielded. Now, there are certainly influencers, don't get me wrong. There are people that really can move the needle, but they're few and far between. And those are the people that are ridiculously expensive. Now, I'm not saying it's not worth the money. Or if someone can really drive the sales, it's a math problem. I mean, we pay them $1 million, we get 5 million in sales, our margin is 20%, okay, we broke even. Our margin is 30%, we made money. There's a way to look at repeat purchase, add to that equation, and lifetime value of a customer adds to that equation. All those things are important. But to me, the real important people are the everyday people, the people that share your products, the advocates, and more important than that, your employees, which I think are ridiculously overlooked. I like to say, empower your employees and they will power your brand. I mean, who knows your product better than your employees? Who trusts your company more than your employees? And if you don't trust your employees, you've probably got the wrong employees, or you're not training them properly. Now, again, I like to empower them to build their brand, to share their story. And again, there are advocates out there. And then the problem is, and I know I'm going on a bit, I tend to, go off, but when we talk about influencers, what I prefer companies to look at it as, and it also makes it a lot easier to measure, is what they're really buying is media. They're not buying true influence. What they're really buying is how many people come to that Instagram page, how many people like that Facebook post, how many people share that post. And if they're really digging in, which many companies are, how many sales are we getting out of that? Whether it's an influencer that they measure, they give out a coupon code, they measure the sales, or maybe it comes through their website, and then they do simple math. Like, is it worth it? It's basically an affiliate fee. You're not really buying influence, you're buying media. They're creating a story, they're taking a picture. It's a guy out on his motorcycle, it's a pretty girl at the beach, and they're talking about your product. What really is that? It's media. And truth be told, but just one last thing, I love that media because I believe it's way more effective than most of the media companies are creating by themselves. So I'm not saying it's bad, I'm saying it needs to be looked at in a different fashion, in my opinion.
Well, this brings me on to another thing, and it's kind of related to it. And I was interested in getting your take on it because I've been, we had a guest on a while back, Jorn Soke from ex-CMO of Anheuser-Busch, and we were discussing the problem that CMOs have with transitioning to the CEO role. And generally, the fact that the marketing job gets lost in translation slightly. And I mean, he basically said that there's two different languages in play. That with the CMO, we're talking about everything that you were just talking about. Okay, the likes, the Instagram likes, the followers, all that sort of stuff. And he was basically saying that, not that it's a bad thing or a good thing, but what his point was that at the boardroom level, that is not currency. What they're looking for is numbers of units sold and numbers of people booking things or whatever, is that there is a direct sale to it. So is there an argument, do you think, that the boardroom itself needs to actually apply these kind of metrics of likes and follows and sort of downloads of white papers and things like that actually is a form of currency?
I think the CMOs you're talking about are not doing their job because they're not translating what they're doing into language that's understandable and accepted by the CEO and the CFO. So it's kind of what I was just talking about. Don't call it an influencer, call it a media buy. You call it an influencer and the CEO goes, oh my God, influencer, what is he doing? And oh, it's a pretty girl on the beach. And oh, she's wearing a bikini, or oh, so this guy's a daredevil. Like, who cares? But what you should be doing is what CEOs do understand, as well as CFOs. They understand media. Media has been around forever. So yes, granted, don't get me wrong, media has to translate into sales, but they understand a media buy. They understand that you're buying NBC at 8 o'clock at night. They understand that you're buying a magazine purchase. They understand now, they even understand digital. They understand that we're buying so many impressions for so many dollars. And then of course you translate that into accountability for how did that buy affect our sales that week? And there are ways, look, every company is different, but there are ways to zero that out. We were doing that back at Collective Bias in 2010 with companies like Clorox and others in Bentonville, where they were able to, they would just like anything else, they would set up a blind where they knew what it was affecting, and they would only do one type of advertising and see how it moved the needle. Then they knew that they could apply it in other ways. So what I feel is that most CMOs don't understand this, and that's where the problem comes in. Now it's changing because a lot of younger people, a lot of millennials are now advancing into these positions, and they grew up as digital natives. So they understand this more. They understand the language better. But part of it, I think, is when we get off on these things like influencers and that word and what we're buying influence. No, you're not. You're buying media. I'm buying this many impressions. Like this guy, this is going to get visited on Instagram or on TikTok or on Snapchat 10 million times. And we know from past experience that when we get 10 million impressions in front of the right target audience, and by the way, I hate the freaking word target. I want to transition the marketing world from targeting to matchmaking, because what you really want to find is your match, not your target. A target you shoot, it's a one-shot transaction. A match is something that's ongoing. But you find your match and you match them to these impressions, and most data departments of a serious marketing company, and I'm sure we're talking about bigger companies now, obviously, because you're talking about C-suites and all this kind of stuff, they can measure that stuff. But I think the language is bewildering. I think talking about likes is like, I'm hoping, look, I have it, it's been a year and a half now since I've been out on the road. It's probably been 2 years since I've been in a corporate boardroom. I would hope they're not talking about that shit anymore, that they're converting that into language that's understandable by the people they're trying to sell. And don't get me wrong, a CMO is trying to sell their CFO and CEO. You talk to a CMO off the record, and they're going to talk to you about, how do I convince my CFO that this is going to work?
Right.
How do I get the budgets I need? How do I get additional budget if I'm running out at the end of the year and I have a great opportunity? You'll hear them say if I'm a sales guy trying to sell something to a CMO, they're going to say to me, well, how do I sell this through? And when they say that, they're talking about to the exact people you're talking about. So I would venture a guess that most of the people that are having a lack of success there are because they're not translating the language into something that's understandable and acceptable in that place. They're probably doing what you initially kind of implied. How do we convince CEOs and CMOs that likes and follows and downloads are valuable? No, look, this goes into another thing that I'm passionate about. And this is something I learned from being a divorced dad. So when you're a divorced dad, whether it's a good divorce or it's a bad divorce or whatever, your kids aren't there all the time, right? I mean, if you're in a standard relationship, you're probably seeing them every other weekend and one night during the week. At best, you're seeing them 50-50. Okay. So you're not coming home every night to your kids. So you've lost that ability to say, damn, you girl, you better call me back because I'm going to see you tonight before you go to bed. So what I like to talk about, I love when I say this to an audience, I go, how many of you have done this? You call up your kid on the phone because you want to hear their voice, and you get a text back in 3 seconds that says, what? With an exclamation point. That is your kid's way of saying, I will not pick up the phone. If you want to communicate with me, you have to communicate with me in the mode and means that's important to me, which is text. Again, there was a point where I was communicating with my younger daughter via Snapchat back like years ago, because it was the only way I could get her damn attention. And what I learned from that, and what I brought to the business world, is you have to communicate with your customers or your target audience or your matchmaking or your boss the way they want to communicate. So this is the channel of their choice. If I want you to do something for me, I've got to communicate the way you prefer. If you want to get me to do something for you, then you have to communicate in my preferred means of communication. So when you're talking to your CMO or your CEO or your CFO, don't try to convince them that likes are worthwhile or downloads are great. Convert that metric into a metric that means something to them.
Superb. That's great. That's really good. Excellent. Okay, so I want to get onto your book. Well, I want to get onto both books actually, but Return on Relationships. Return on Relationship, singular. You talk about listening. You talk about making connections. You talk about being useful, or serving them, and talk about ongoing engagement, building relationships, and reading the room. And because obviously this is a new business related podcast and show, these are all the same principles that you can apply to the sales process. I mean, was Return on Relationship designed as a sales book? I mean, and as a follow-up, how can anybody that's listening to the show, apply those 5 principles, we can go through them if you want, to the digital world. I mean, are there any examples you can use just to, like, just to demonstrate how it works?
Well, I began my business life in sales. From when I was young, and I made copper pins in my copper, I made pins in my copper kiln and cufflinks and sold them when I was in 5th grade. Anything I could get my hands on. My dad used to work for a company that brought stuff in from overseas. I would get straw bags. I would get calculators. When I was in college, I used to buy jewelry in New York and sell it, up at Cornell in Ithaca, New York. And so a lot of my mindset comes from sales, and what I learned from that, and really what I learned from my dad was, and it goes, be good to people, and how are you, because your relationship comes first. And everybody, look, there's an old line that says, everything being equal, everybody would rather do business with someone they like versus someone they don't like. And then it goes on, everything being unequal, everyone would prefer to do business with someone they like versus someone they don't like. So that doesn't mean people are going to drop everything for someone they like, but it gives you an edge if you build how do you get someone to like you? You listen to them. And I like to say, don't just listen, but hear. Now, a lot of people tell me that grammatically it's supposed to be the other way around, but I like to say that everybody can listen. I think of listening as just a mechanical thing. Hearing is opening your mind to hearing what they have to say. So learning to remember people's names when they tell them to you. Don't just, when you say hello, how are you, listen for the answer. People, hey, how you doing? Nobody, when I say I'm doing great, people look and go, huh? Like, they don't expect an answer. And by the way, you would think that's just passing people on the street. No, it's in business meetings, it's at conventions, it's at events. People don't even wait to hear the answer. They jump into what they want to sell you. So first of all, if I'm willing to talk, there's nothing I love better when I'm selling than someone wants to talk to me. I just shut up, and I listen, because I know they are going to give me the tools to give them what they want. And my toughest sales ever were back when I was really in sales. Well, when I would get one of these, old school guys that would just sit there and go, what do you got? And I'd say, hey, man, that's a great picture of you fishing. Like, you love to fish? What's your price? And I'd look at another thing, I'd say, oh my God, you went to NYU. When were you there? How many you got? That's the tough guy, the one that starts talking and allows you into their world. So we've got all these tools. Like, I go to meetings now, and again, not for a while, but I did. And it always amazed me. Like, I'd be consulting for a company, I'd be supporting them, and the first word out of their salesman's mouth to someone that they're at an agency, or they're trying to talk to somebody, and they'll say, how long have you been here? And I'm like, oh my God, you didn't look at their LinkedIn profile?
Sure.
You don't ask the guy how long you've been here. You got two real options. Oh my God, this is what I would say. Wow, you've been here for 25 years. I can really learn a lot from you. Or, wow, you just started 6 months ago. Is there anything we can do to support you? I mean, my dad taught me this lesson years and years ago. And again, I want to apologize to your audience. I go off on tangents. It's who I am. I can't help myself. But my dad, when I first graduated, college, and my dad was the guy that would drive around the neighborhood. We'd be coming home from somewhere. There'd be garbage cans in the middle of the street. He'd get out and he'd put them back in front of somebody's house. He'd see something falling down. He'd get out of his car and fix it. And then he made me be that guy as soon as I was old enough to be able to do it. We used to shovel snow to make money in the winter, but I always had to do my house and my neighbor's house before I did anything. And if my neighbor tried to give me money, he used to have to sneak it to me, because my dad would be like, that's like family. You don't take something there, whatever it happens to be. And my dad calls me up. I'm on my first job. I'm just out of college. He calls me up at the end of the week. And, he knew that part of my job was to get my first appointment. And he calls me up. He goes, so did you do it? I said, yeah. He goes, well, when is it? I said, it's Thursday. He said, what time? I said, 10 o'clock. He goes, what time are you going to get there? I said, I don't know, about 5 to 10. He goes, no, get there at 9 o'clock. Now, remember, this was 1980. There was no LinkedIn. There was microfiche. Remember microfiche, when you have to go and pull down this stuff in the library and maybe you could find an article about a company? And there were source books that basically said the company had so many people. He said, get to the neighborhood, walk around, see what restaurants are there, what stores are there, go into the building, look up on the board and see what other companies in the building. Get up into the office early and see if his or her assistant or can help you get you into the office. See what photos are on the wall, what diplomas on the wall. Find points of emotional connection. Find something you can talk about other than your sale and get them talking. And to me, that opportunity is so much bigger now because there's no excuse not to know something about somebody you're meeting. Hell, I don't go out on a date. I don't go to meet anybody without Googling them and by the way, it's not so always for intel. It's because I want to show that I care. I don't call a friend. I go I go to social pages because if I haven't spoken even to a good friend in a few months, I don't want to call them up and say, how's everything? And they say my mom died. Or and a lot of this information is available, so you can be prepared. So to me, when it comes to sales, and again, the smaller the company, the more important this is. The newer you are, the less references you have, the less size you have of your company, the more important it is. I'm working on this building and I'm looking to put in a new roof, and we're down to the last 3 bids that we're deciding between, and 2 of them that we're leaning towards are huge companies with just massive amounts of trucks. And one of our biggest concerns is what's going to happen when the roof comes off, not when it's going on. What's going to happen when there's a hurricane and we need somebody here to fix it? Are they still going to be there? Is their warranty going to mean anything? And the one guy that we're considering that doesn't have all of that, he has gone the extra mile, and he's the only reason he's still in the game. And by the way, he's a lot less expensive, but the problem is the fear of what he'll be. So he's got a real good shot at getting this deal because he's been here every week. He calls me up. He doesn't call up and say, have you made a decision? He calls up and says, what can I do to help you with your decision? Is there anything I can do to support you? Is there anything I can do that you mentioned to me that you were a little worried that you couldn't find, the names of our owners? I sent them to you. Was that okay? Did you find out the information you needed? This is how you build rapport. This is how you build connection. This is how you make people feel comfortable with the sale they're making. Now, again, I'm not sure about your audience, but I'm assuming a big part of it is B2B. And in B2B sales, it's after the sale that's the most important time. Companies are worried. Are you going to be there to support them? Not only are you capable of being in there, but will you be there? Are you the kind of person they can count on? So to me, the making it about them, of course, these things go to basic retail. When was the last time you walked in the store and someone said, what can I do to help you? What can I do to serve you? That's what we want to hear as human beings, especially if we're expending our capital, both emotional and financial. We want to hear from people that they're going to be there to support us. We want to feel that emotional connection. Like, come on, I have a business partner that's helping me who's much more educated in contracting and construction. And he's like, hey, Ted, I'm really worried about this guy. I'm like, yeah, but don't you trust him? He's like, well, he's like, yeah, the guy's been here. He's really shown us who he is. Yes, these other companies are big, but the guy came once, and and then all we do is get an email saying, when are you going to have a decision? So that's where I think all these things like listening and making it about them and following up beyond the sale and getting that engagement going so that we all feel comfortable with people that we have a back and forth with, who we become comfortable asking questions and knowing that we're going to get answers.
And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is how you sell. That's the last 5 minutes of that Ted's just said there. That's exactly how we do it. So anyway, well, that's fantastic. I mean, all right. Well, I want to talk to you, carry on about the influence. You were just talking about the power of passing on recommendations and stuff. I mean, you can't deny that you are an influencer yourself. I mean, you've got over about 500,000 followers on Twitter and stuff like that, I think. But I mean,
I am considered an influencer, but I'll tell you that I always tell people I don't want to be measured. Like, I am not the kind of influencer that will move your needle and drive 1,000 sales in your store, but I will get your story out. I will get it heard, and I will create conversation. And to me, yes, some people can drive sales into a store right away, and that's important. And that's not me. That's just not my power. But I will create conversation. And I like to say that conversation is the best content, because conversation is what keeps people thinking about you and knowing what your product is and what you do.
Fantastic. Just I don't know whether I'm going to keep this bit in, but have you ever Googled? I'm sure you have. Have you ever Googled yourself?
Yeah, of course.
Because I Googled you, okay, just did a random Google, okay, and the first stuff there's some weird shit about you. I mean, just like what the hell? Why did somebody? The first thing that came up was about your star sign, right? So here's a question, okay, based on your star sign. Okay, it said, according to astrologers, Ted Rubin's strengths are responsible, disciplined, self-control, good managers, and his weaknesses are know-it-all, unforgiving, condescending, and expect the worst. How accurate is that?
Wow. No, well, I'd say it's, probably 75%. I mean, again, we don't always view ourselves the way others view us. I don't think of, I think I'm too forgiving. It's something I work on. Although people might see me as unforgiving because again, this is a star thing, so it's not really what people are saying. But, I would say that some of it's accurate. I don't think of myself as unforgiving. I don't even remember the rest of what you said. That just went by very quickly. But I've also never seen that. I don't, it's funny because also remember about Google that people forget is that you get different results than I get. We don't
Of
all
course,
get the same
absolutely.
result.
I don't know how I managed to get your star sign stuff, but
I thought you were gonna bring up my socks because I'm known for my socks. So there's a hashtag Ted Socky.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to do, yeah, I'll have to check that one out as well. But no, I mean, I just think it's
up for me.
It's a good idea. It's a good thing to actually just sort of run that by you, I thought. But I thought the responsible, disciplined, self-control, and good managers are nice things to have said about you, anyway. But
I think those are pretty accurate. Except again, I'm very critical of myself, so I don't think I'm nearly as disciplined as I should be. So that's probably the only one I would take.
Take issue with on that one, yeah.
Take issue with. Thank you. I lost that one for a
That's
moment.
right. Okay. Now, I had a show recently with a gentleman called Steve Harrison, who's a legendary advertising copywriter in the UK, and he's got a book out called Can't Sell, Won't Sell, which is it's a fantastic story, a fantastic book about the idea that we've basically, that companies have stopped selling things, and that brands are now trying to engage in trying to be politically correct in order to win business. And my kind of takeaway from that was that I'm just wondering whether we have now kind of reached that sort of sales singularity where the sort of the commercialism of sell this, buy this, and everything else crosses over into kind of purpose-driven marketing, and that consumers apply purpose to a product as much as they would price or availability. So, what you're doing is just as important as price, convenience, and quality and stuff. I mean, the fact is, I mean, do you think that there is a change in why we buy why we buy brands and things, and that do you think that this sort of purpose-driven marketing actually will work, or is it do you just think it's kind of a flag of convenience for a lot of brands?
Well, I will say, and again, I'm going to assume you expressed the feelings about the book correctly. I don't necessarily agree with the take that it's about political correctness. I think companies are trying to do the right thing. Now, that might be the side of the political spectrum I come from. Okay, granted. I'm left wing and I'm liberal, and I think companies need to start doing the right thing. And so I think a lot of what he's calling political correctness is really companies saying we've got to treat people fairly. We've got to speak to them appropriately. We can't use language that's not appropriate, and we've got to listen if we create some kind of advertising or something else about us that people take issue with. We need to listen to them. Like, I don't call it, cancel culture. I call it evolution of culture. I call it listening. I call it hearing what people are saying. Look, I post a lot of different content, and I pay attention. Like especially if I know I'm posting something controversial, I listen to what people say. I want to hear, because, by the way, I can be influenced. I might say something and you might say that's inappropriate, and I'll look at it and go, you're right. I need to adjust that a little bit. Maybe I didn't get my message across the right way, or maybe my message was fine, but maybe I shouldn't be saying that because it's insulting certain people that I don't want to insult. So more towards your question about a purpose-driven marketing, I think purpose-driven marketing has its place and it's important, but it also back to matchmaking and targeting. It depends on who your audience is. So, I do not think people buy stuff from a company just because they donate money to charity. I think that they buy from that company because they like the product and they know they're doing good things and they know that $1 of every product goes to something. But I think very few people buy a pair of glasses because Warby Parker is giving a free pair of frames for every X amount they sell. I think that's an addition. I think that's something that goes into the story. I think that's something that goes into, the culture and community of the company and the way people view it. I think it's way more. I think people also want to know that companies treat their employees well. But again, look, here's a perfect example. Like, I'm a huge Amazon fan. I'm a huge Amazon fan when it comes to their product and how they deliver and what they do. I'm not necessarily happy with some of the things I hear about what they do, but does it stop them from becoming the largest company in the world? No. Why? Because they provide a great customer experience. They provide great pricing. They have great customer service, and they get shit done. Now, and Walmart, I would guess, in their own vein, is in the same place. There are people that take issue with what Walmart does. Could the owners of Walmart and could Jeff Bezos and the board of Amazon give back more? Certainly, a lot more, and they should be giving back more. But does that stop both of them from becoming the two biggest retailers in the world, or three if you include Alibaba? No, it doesn't. So I think that purpose-driven marketing, and I think all those kinds of things that are happening around making people feel good about the company are certainly important, but they're part of the overall story. So yes, now, if Amazon was a believer in fascism and was supporting the Nazi party, no, then I think that would crush their business. No, but if they're just not maybe taking care of their employees as well as we all believe they should, if they're not giving as much back to the community as we'd like to see them doing, if they're not paying enough taxes, I take issue with that, but I don't think that's going to get in the way of their business growing. No. It all goes in how much does it affect your emotions and your heart, and how bad is it that they're doing, or how little are they giving back? So again, I think purpose-driven marketing is important. I think it's taking hold. I think people are starting to look at companies and what they do. But, then again, it also goes back to, is it really a part of who they are? When Ben and Jerry's says they're giving back, we go, oh, of course they are. That's who Ben and Jerry were. That's what the company was built on. When Coca-Cola talks about wanting to help the world get healthier, I go, are you freaking kidding me? You're feeding us poison. You're putting up ads that make us think Coke is good, and then you're donating a few dollars? No, be honest. Say, we make a shitload of money selling you crap, but that's okay because we're going to give a big percentage of it back to help people, and maybe help them get a little healthier because all they've been doing is consuming sugar.
Yes, the fact that there's zero nutrition at all whatsoever in a Coca-Cola is I think is
right.
Owen. That it's been. I mean, you presumably, I don't know whether you follow soccer or football in the UK, but the football championships, there was a very funny incident recently with Ronaldo, the Portugal player, who at the press conference after the match turned up, and there were 2 Coke bottles sitting in front of him, and he picked them up, moved them brilliantly out of frame. I mean, just literally out of frame for all the cameras. Right. And just basically said in Portuguese that Coca-Cola's bad for you, drink water. Right. And suddenly their share price tanked as a result of it, And I mean, that I think is, it's definitely a new era that I think we're all in, and we've got to get used to it.
It is. And what it does is it just affects, how do I fight back on that? I mean, the share price tanked for a day, and because someone like that is not going to keep your share price down forever, because you're still going to sell a lot of that product. But then it's also
the message.
But here's to the message is that Coca-Cola has listened, and I'm not telling them they need to shut down their business, but they are doing things to counteract that, to say that they are trying to help people. They donate millions of dollars to good causes. I mean, so part of their story is getting that out. Like, but again, don't tell me Coca-Cola is healthy. Just tell me you're selling me something that people love, and they do. Look, they drink it because, look, I probably haven't had a Coke or a soda in 20 years, but I still remember what it tastes like, and I would still love to pour one over ice and drink it. I just won't, because I made a decision that I'm not going to poison myself that way. But look, it's just like people smoking cigarettes. I mean, I look at people now, I go, how the hell can you smoke? Like, with all, I mean, like, and by the way, now, like, you can't argue with me that it's not going to kill you, you know, like, but people still do it. So there's still a market for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's you know, fair point. But and I want to go on to content marketing, because I'm very aware of the fact that this is very much in your kind of wheelhouse, and it's something that is very very close to Ian Truscott's sort of heart as well. And the idea that, I mean, you know, it's not an original, content marketing isn't a sort of a brand new thing. It's, you know, it's been around for ages, but given the pandemic and everybody working from home, it's now become a very useful tool for us, you know, for people in sort of sales and new business to use. And trust, usefulness, I mean, they're all kind of big watchwords that anybody working in sales uses, but we're all familiar with the idea of putting out, you know, of being controversial. Like you said, you know, you say something controversial, you put something out there that grabs the attention. That's the idea of content marketing, is to grab somebody's attention. But I mean, given your experience, I mean, what advice can you give? I mean, so you grab somebody's attention, what's the follow? How do you follow on from that? I mean, if you put something out there that's going to snap people's heads around and sort of so everybody wants to have a read of it, how do you follow that up? I mean, is it about, you know, sort of being consistent? And I mean, what are the sort of the watchwords for that?
I don't think content marketing is about getting people's attention by getting them to snap their heads. I think that's bullshit content marketing. I think that's the fake content marketing that's been created over the last few years with phony headlines and attention grabbers. I mean, how many of us go to an article and it's not even about what we thought it was going to be about, because it has nothing to do with what the headline was. Yeah. So to me, that's crap. What content marketing is really about, I mean, when you get down to the heart of it, is it's about search. It's about when people go to, most people find things now via Google, via search, via Brave, via Google, via you know, all the different search engines. That's the way most products are found today. And content marketing has a dramatic effect on search, and even more so on local search. And it's one of the reasons my business partners and I have, and especially my John Andrews, my real business partner, like the one I work with on everything, we've been telling companies that if you want to generate local attention, you need to create content and you need to be posting it regularly. And it's why we say you got to empower your employees, because it's hard to create all of that through an agency or by yourself. And people go to find things, and content gives them something to read about it. And the other thing about content on a personal branding scale and for companies is that you get to tell a story. You get to share with people more than just a one-liner, more than just a commercial, which either they think is funny or they don't, and they tend to forget about after it goes off the air. And people read these things. Now, what I think the attention aspect and where it's important is, you don't want to ramble on. You don't want to start slow. You want to give them something in the beginning that lets them know what you're talking about. You want to give them some good content quickly. And it's also why content has become so snackable over the years, because all of us are so time set pressured that we're not, like, I don't know about you, but I probably got at least 10 to 15 URLs open on my desktop of articles that I want to finish reading that I just couldn't. I just didn't have time. Something else came up.
Am I sharing my screen?
You know, and so a lot of the best content is stuff that gets your point across very quickly. So the attention getting part is certainly part about that, but not the phony attention getting by saying something that riles them up or gets them crazy. I'm not a believer in that, you know, unless that's really what the article is about. You know, I mean, if I'm writing something and it's politically motivated, or it's about the pandemic, or it's something, and I want to make sure people know that I'm talking about, you know, doing this is unsafe, well, then I'm going to follow it up with really what it is. But then I'm not going to go off into talking about a new face covering that is really attractive and fashionable, because then I'm bullshitting them. And I think that people have gotten smart to this point. Now, look, everything's about numbers. And, all of us get those phony calls and we get all the things. We go, why do people keep make these things? Like it says right on my phone, spam alert, and even if I do pick it up because they happen to use an exchange that looks familiar to me and I think it might be my family or somebody, the minute I hear that delay or that click into the auto thing, I hang up and we all think, why do they do this? Well, these companies are direct marketers. They do the math.
Yeah.
So yes, there are people that will react to those things. And if it's a cheap enough experience, in other words, if they can create those calls or that ad in an impression basis that's low enough cost that if they get that one consumer per X amount of dollars, and that makes them their money. I mean, that's why we're getting all these calls for car extended warranties because those things are all margin. So
Right.
if they only have to sell one out of, who knows, 10,000, of those calls to actually make their money. So they do it, but that doesn't build a good reputation for the company. That's not longevity. That's about a quick sale. So to me, it's so important that content is important because also it allows me to tell who I am, what my company is about, what I'm about. Like I push people all the time to go to my Facebook page because I want them to know who I am, and I publish a lot of content there. And by the way, I'm not afraid of them knowing who I am. Yes, I'm Jewish. I'm proud of it. I write about anti-Semitism. I write about Black Lives Matters. I'm liberal. I'm a Joe Biden supporter. I want people in our country to give more so that people can have more who don't have. And I'm not afraid to say that. And by the way, if that's now, part of this might be that I'm at a point in my life that's okay, because there were points in my life where I needed every nickel I could get my hands on because I was so short of money that I needed to do whatever it took. But truth be told, this is who I've been my whole life. If I can't be who I am, I always tell my daughters that there's the Dr. Seuss quote, be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind. And to me, that's important. But I also believe in today's day and age, it's okay if you're on the other side of the political spectrum that I am. I'm not going to not do business with you because of it, unless you're a white supremacist and a racist and somebody I think really does terrible things. But I like to know who you are. I want to know who I'm talking to. One of my best buddies, are on the other side of the political spectrum that I am. We know what conversations not to get into. We know when we're both going to be unmoving, but we share a love and a caring about certain people and certain things that we can do. But if I don't know that, then I don't know what's appropriate to say and what's not appropriate to say. So I just believe that when we write things, and going back to your conversation about companies being politically correct, I think part of that is important because it lets you know what's not acceptable in that company and the conversations that aren't going to be acceptable. And that's also going to make it easier for someone to do business there and know what's acceptable and what's not and what direction they're going, beyond them just trying to change the world. It's also about saying how is best to communicate with me, back to that conversation about communication.
I want to talk about Don't Rent, Co-Own, which was a great article that you posted, and I felt it's something that a lot more people need to sort of read, because it highlights the difference between using, and this is a big sort of content marketing
You own it and can do anything you want with it. You can repurpose it. You can share it anywhere. But a lot of contracts come to me and they say, what you write for us, we own. And I don't know if I've ever agreed to a contract like that. For the right money, I guess I would. But what I find, I get value out of what I create, and I think of it as part of me. And understand that I'm not the kind of writer you hire I'm not a ghostwriter. I'm not the guy you call up and say, I need a post about buying scotch in Scotland. I write what I'm passionate about. Most of my posts come from either a comment I made on someone else's blog or a comment that was made on mine or something they wrote that I reacted to. So I really think of it as mine. Like I don't contract write. I mean, people will reach out and say, well, we'd love to get some kind of posts about your travel and how you love this, but it's always very open-ended. Again, I always say to them, if you're going to give me an outline and say, this is what I read about, I'm not that efficient a writer. My writing flows when it's something that I'm passionate about and I'm excited about. And so most companies come to me about things they know that I'm passionate or about. So all my contracts say that I co-own the content, which means, by the way, you want me to. I am going to reference the original post that was in your American Express. I wrote a lot for MasterCard, American Express, Progressive Insurance, Hertz. And they posted it on their platforms, but then I reposted it with a link at the bottom that says originally posted at American Express Workspace or at Progressive Insurance but I want ownership of that. So I can break it up because I repurpose a lot of my content. I break it into smaller pieces. I use it as tweets. I put it on in different places. So the first answer to your question is co-owning means that I don't just give away my content. I want to own a piece of it so I can use it in the future. The other point that you were talking about, which is, well, actually, there's two other points, I believe. One is, yes, I post a lot of content on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, and other places, but a lot of it gets repurposed or posted the exact way I posted it to tedrubin.com or to returnonrelationship.com, which is now ROR.online. Because that way it's somewhere that I own it, that can't go away. Tomorrow, Mark Zuckerberg could wake up and go, guys, I've had enough. I've got $300 billion. I'm closing Facebook down. I'm exaggerating, but
boom goes all your content.
Or he could change the terms of service tomorrow and give you 60 days to get your shit. Hey, recently I got shut down by Facebook permanently. It was a mistake. Someone had been in my account. Something had happened. There were all these horrible things posted that never showed up on my page. I don't even know what happened. But truth be told, the only reason I got it reopened is because I have contacts at Facebook, because forget about writing to them through regular channels. But my panic wasn't so much that I couldn't post to Facebook anymore. It was the lack of access to all the photos and all the things I posted there. What gave me solace is when, of course, I was panicking when people around me said, dude, you got that content in 20 other places. Like, don't worry about it. I've got files of photos. I've got every blog post I've ever written in Word docs on my laptop. I've also got them posted to tedrubin.com. So I was able to go, well, that's great, because again, I have stuff in a place that I own versus somebody else owning. And then the third component to this is, what do I decide to post in different places? And so this is where it gets a little controversial. I'm a believer that social platforms belong to the person who is socializing. So what I post on LinkedIn is up to me. It's my space. Don't tell me that this is not business related. It shouldn't be. And I get this all the time. I post about being a dad. I post about things I'm going to. I post about politics sometimes, not on a daily basis, but if it's something I think is critical, I will post about it. And I'm doing that for a number of reasons. Number one is, it's my platform. It's my brand, right? I own it. I can write anything I want on it. I mean, again, as long as I'm not, doing things that violate their terms of service. The other thing is, I've got a lot of followers on LinkedIn that don't follow me on Facebook. Like, someone will go, what is that doing here? That should be on Facebook. Well, do you follow me on Facebook? No. So I'm glad you read it. I don't care if you don't like it. You read it. That means I got my point across. This is my platform. I have 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, and you saw it. So that's number two. Number three is, like we talked about earlier, I think people should know who they're doing business with. I want people to know who I am. And by the way, there's multiple reasons. Number one is, I want them to know if they show up and I'm speaking, they can expect that I might go outside the box a little bit, that I might say things that make them uncomfortable. If they're hiring me to speak, look, I've had companies that have given me outlines. Look, we've listened to a bunch of your talks. This is what we'd rather you don't do on our stage. Fine. So I'm going to give you two really great examples. I did a lot of work for Mary Kay. I know the CMO there, a lot of people, Mary Kay Cosmetics. And I went in and I not only did I keynote at one of their events, but I emceed their whole 4-day global marketing event. And number one is, I had to wear a suit. They're into suits and ties. So the CMO, who's a good friend, said, you know that bow tie you wore when we went to that event together? Could you wear those? And by the way, I know you wear jackets and jeans, but I need the whole suit. Sure, no problem. I mean, as long as you tell me up front, don't wait until I show up the wrong way. But she knew that about me. So then she said, and listen, no, you cannot curse on a Mary Kay stage. By the way, you can't say heck.
Wow.
You can't say heck. You will get thrown off. You will get pulled off the stage. But I'm a divorced dad. I talk about that. They go, oh, that's open game, because Mary Kay was a divorced mom. And the reason she started Mary Kay was to support her family. So she's all about single moms, single families. Like whereas I went to talk at Cox Media for their sales teams, and I was told, you can curse all you want, but don't talk about divorce. Now they, again, the only reason they knew to prep me like this was because my content's out there, because they see what I write about, because they know I have a divorced dad section on my blog, because they know when I'm on stage, just like I talked to you earlier when I made the mention about talking to people in the way they want to be communicated with, I talk about being divorced. So they knew enough to tell me, either don't use that story or change it. Don't talk about that. So to me, it's really about what works for you. Now, here's the second component to that. Pay attention. If I get a lot of negative feedback from something I'm doing, and these are people that I don't want negative feedback from, I change what I'm posting. Again, right. LinkedIn has a different use for me than other places. So if by the way, that doesn't mean one person complained. Like I get people going, oh my God, I saw 10 complaints here. I go, yeah, I got 5,000 emails thanking me for this post.
Yeah, the good far outweighs the bad here.
10 to 5,000. So, but what's really important, this goes back to listening. You need to listen to your audience. You need to listen to your followers. I'll tell you right now that one of my practices, and here's a real good tip for some of your people. I use Twitter as my first means of communication when I'm posting anything that is either new and I want quick feedback. It can be a totally 100% positive thing. And especially if I'm writing something controversial.
Right.
And by the way, that controversial can be controversial marketing suggestion. It can be controversial about politics. It can be controversial about families or being a dad. Why? Because Twitter's like a river. Yes, that tweet stays there forever, but it moves off your screen
very quickly. Yeah.
Very quickly. And you can no one faults you if you keep reposting that post in a different format. So I'll start out on Twitter. Very often I'll go through 5 tweets before it gets to the format where I'm willing to put it on Facebook or LinkedIn, because now I've vetted the feelings. I've understood. So I'll give you a great example. I like to be fit. It's very important to me. I became a vegan about 5 or 6 years ago. I'm into eating healthy, but what really irritates me is people that are unhealthy, but complain about, but then stuffing their faces with horrible things. By the way, if you say, I'm okay with it, I'm going to eat Doritos and Coke for every meal, and I don't care how sick and how fat I get, fine, but don't complain, oh my God, I can't lose weight, or oh my God, I'm at the doctor every week.
Quit acting surprised about it.
So I'm on a plane and I'm up front and I'm like watching this guy. I've been listening to this guy who wouldn't stop, shut up, and talking about his weight problem. And I'm standing up waiting to go to the bathroom, and the guy's sitting there and he's on his 5th Coke and 5 bags of Doritos. And I needed to write something about it. But the first tweet I wrote was really insensitive. And because it was my first emotional, visceral reaction to it. Like, oh my God, how disgusting. And look at this guy. And I got a lot of negative feedback. Oh my God, that's so judgmental. I can't believe the way you said that. So I said, thank you. And I came back and I refined it. And literally, I did post about it on Facebook, but not until I had moved through the process of turning this into really getting the message across that I wanted to get across, which was, you need to take care of yourself. Just because you're in air, because some of the comments back were like, well, when I fly, I eat anything. And like, well, how often do you fly? And is that okay? Or the people that say on vacation, I'm gonna eat anything, and they come back 30 pounds heavier and they end up at the doctor's office, but they're just not putting that together. But I wanted the message, in the end, I wanted it to come across as something positive, not negative. And it took me a while to create that. So I used Twitter to create that. And then from Facebook, it went to LinkedIn, where I made it more of a post about travel and business and how to stay healthy.
Right.
And less about the disgusting nature of stuffing your face with Coca-Cola and Doritos. Where if I had posted that to LinkedIn, I would have gotten some serious pushback. So
kind of refined it and honed the message.
but
So
I will tell you, I don't post everything I like post everywhere. You know, I mean, there's some things I do post. I mean, almost everything I post to Facebook, I post to Instagram because I consider them very similar types of platforms. But of course, I don't post the articles I post to Facebook because LinkedIn doesn't render those. Like you can't click through to a link. So you need to consider how the platform works. Like a lot of people, they syndicate from one place. So in other words, a lot of people will syndicate from LinkedIn to Facebook, but understand if you put a handle of LinkedIn, that handle won't work on Facebook. And then someone's getting like a dead kind of thing. So you've got to think through the way they work, what they do, what you're looking to accomplish. And then you got to listen and evolve your strategy as you go. And I will tell you that I've evolved. I don't post all the same things. I do different things. I post much more political stuff to LinkedIn during an election year than I do otherwise, unless something's coming up that I think is of critical importance. And I also tend to tame it a little more on LinkedIn. On Facebook, I might use words that I wouldn't use on LinkedIn because and then the other thing is, I try not to tangle with people. I try to be polite. I try to be professional. I don't argue. But, on Facebook, things might get a little bit more heated. I'll never let it go there like that on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, it's, when I get into comments or I get into back and forth, it's a professional platform. I try to be a little more professional. So, but these are strategies that have evolved over time. You've got to listen, you've got to learn, you've got to evolve, and you've got to make sure that you're seeing that what you're hearing, how it's affecting everything else you're doing.
right, yeah. And so, I mean, touching back on something that you said, you said earlier about employees, sort of using the power of employees. Do you think that, I mean, this is a quite a profitable channel profitable strategy?
Alert from Google Chrome.
Sorry about that.
Whoa. But the idea of employees as influencers, I mean, it's quite an interesting strategy. I mean, are there just a quick sort of overview of how that works?
Well, there's so much to it. There's employees as influencers. There's creating employee community so that people work better together. There's employee as experts. So I think that companies should be surfacing their employees to create people who are not necessarily, their job is to create white papers or to create webinars or to create podcasts, but they're experts in their fields, or you can help them become experts in their fields. But back to the employee as influencers, I want to take my workforce and turn them into a marketing force. Especially if I'm a company that can get my employees to love what I do and know that we really care about our customers, and obviously you have to be that way for them to feel that way, but that will exude through them to the people they talk to. Oh my God, my company's the greatest. And oh, that product really is all natural and healthy, especially today with all these new products coming out. Again, I'm a vegan, and becoming a vegan has become so much easier because there's so many more options out there, but I don't trust them all. I look at a lot of them. I know there's bad ingredients. I look at everything, but I love when I can speak to somebody there, even if it's just an employee on the phone, or I read an article and the person says, I work at this company, and oh my God, the lengths they go to bring in the finest products and the most organic products. And, I shop at Whole Foods. But I got to tell you, like, I didn't always trust what I had there, but I did a few events at Whole Foods, and I was at their headquarters, and I got to meet a number of their top employees. And then I was trying to help a friend get his product in there. And they said, oh, we'd love to help. Let me get you first the documents that he's got to fill out. And I was like, oh my God, like what you have to do to prove that your product is worthy of getting in Whole Foods is unbelievable. You have to, where every piece of the product is sourced, where everything you do, what your factory is, it has to get inspected. And all of a sudden now I trust products much more than I ever did at Whole Foods because employees share stuff with me.
Right.
So that's to me, the smallest benefit. The biggest benefit is give them content to share. Show them when you're doing something, ask them to share it on their social channels, but support them in a way that don't just give them content, like help them build their personal profiles. Tell them that them being on social media is not only good, but it's important to you as a company. You want to encourage it. What's the two biggest reasons most employees are not on social media? They're worried about losing their job, or they're too busy. So say to them, hey, having a social footprint is really good. It's going to help you get a future job. It's going to help you in your life. It's going to help you find help when your kids need help. I mean, people reach out to me every day because they're like, oh my God, I'm having a problem with Lowe's. I'll post about it. Somebody pays attention to it. Or they know that because of all my travels in the marketing world, I probably know somebody there. Like I said, the only reason I got my Facebook account fixed is because I know senior executives at Facebook. So tell your employees that this is truly for their benefit. And you're going to give them content to help them, but don't just give them content about your company. Give them content about childcare. Give them content about events in their town. Give them content about finance, about creating for retirement, about continuing education, about recommended books. You asked me about a book. I sent you I have a post about some of the books I think that are important. So if you show them that, now, if you just give them content about your company, oh, post this, and company did this, we're ranked number 10. First of all, not only are they going to get tired of it, their friends and family aren't going to want to read that shit. They're going to say, all this is an advertisement. But if it's fed in one in every 10 or 15 or 20 posts, think about the power of that. Everyone, if your average employee has 500, let's bring it down to 100. Your average employee, you have 10,000 employees, your average employee has 100 followers. Do the math. Not so hard.
No.
Okay. You got 1 million people that you're going to be able to reach via something that they post. Some companies these days are using that as their only advertising. And again, not big companies, obviously, but smaller companies that have when I was at Elf Cosmetics, I had zero marketing budget, zero. The only marketing budget I had was my salary and one assistant and interns. And we took a brand from $5 million to $50 million. They're now $1 billion company. We became the biggest social media presence in cosmetics back when Estee Lauder and L'Oreal and all these others were afraid to use it. And what did I do? I got people in my company. I got bloggers to start writing about us. I gave them lipsticks so they'd write about it. I didn't even make them. I didn't say I'm giving it to you because you have to write. I just know bloggers write. By the way, that's what a blog is. It's writing. Vloggers make videos. Give them crap that they like. They're going to share about it. And a lot of companies have their employees that can do, especially the bigger companies that have tens of thousands of employees. I guarantee you they've got influencers they don't even know they have. They've got experts they don't know they have. There should be a department. A friend of mine, David Garrison, runs a company called Brightmore. And one of the things they do is they help you surface and train your internal experts.
Nice.
So I could go on and on. I mean, but it just doesn't end. And by the way, their friends are going to start sharing. Their friends are, oh, I saw you posted that. Do you want me to share it? Of course, please. Thank you. I've got a dozen friends that share stuff that they'll see me post something and I go, oh, is that a new client or is that a friend or you want us to share it? Yeah, thanks.
Fantastic stuff. I mean, Ted, it's so wonderful to be able to get this, and I'm so glad I'm able to sort of capture it, and that we can co-own it and co-share it and all that sort of thing. I'm quite happy with that. But I mean, are you, now that things are starting to sort of maybe take a slightly more relaxed tone in terms of whether we're all able to get together again? I mean, are you going to get on the speaking circuit again anytime soon? Well,
I'll tell you, I had 20 speaking gigs booked in 2021.
Wow.
I'm sorry, in 2020.
Right.
I'm losing. We're all losing track of time.
It's all right. You're allowed to forget 2020.
And that was going to be all my income for the year, because most of the stuff I was working on were startups and things where I was getting equity or doing other things. Right. And I was happy. I was happy to be the guy that didn't get paid, because they would look at me and go, well, you're making plenty of money doing that. Like, can you support us and we'll give you more paper or whatever? I'm like, sure. And it was great. And then it all fell apart. And, last year was a bit of a disaster in that respect. I also made a decision that I didn't want to do the online speaking thing. Like I'm happy to do podcasts and support people. I didn't want to pitch myself as a Zoom speaker. I don't get the same thrill out of it. I'm going to get off the phone. I'm going to get off this with you and I'm exhausted. All I want to do is lay down. I put so much out and I don't get back when I'm doing this, what I get back when I'm on stage.
Sure.
So now, but a lot of the momentum I had, I am not a guy, I don't work through an agency. I don't have a representative. Speaking was always something that just happened for me because I got on stages. I had consulting gigs that got me on stages. Brand Innovators was a company that I emceed all their events, and I was on stage 50 times a year for them. And it was an annual gig, but that got me all these other speaking gigs. So I'm at a point in my life where like, I don't necessarily want to go out and get a representative or get a speaker, but what I'll tell you is just this morning, I woke up and there was the first real world speaking offer in my inbox. Ted,
Oh,
can we talk? We'd love to have you speak at our event. It's all our managers from throughout the US. Could we get on a call, or could you let me know what it takes to engage you? And I was like, I
hooray.
love when things happen serendipitously. Now, by the way, it didn't happen just on its own. It happened because I'm constantly publishing, I'm constantly posting, I'm writing things all the time. I get on podcasts. That's my advertising. And so what I will tell you is that I'm not going to tell you I won't chase the business, because tomorrow I could wake up and decide I want to. One thing I'm thinking about is doing some local speaking with my business partner, because I normally turn down local gigs because they don't have the budgets that the bigger speaking gigs have that pay my way and pay my fee. And a lot of times I didn't take the local ones because I was afraid it would diminish my brand, because people
Right.
talk, oh, you only paid him that. But John and I are thinking how much fun it would be to just get in our cars, like start out around here and around where he is in Raleigh, and just hang out for a while and just do a bunch of local speaking gigs. So that's something we've been talking about. Plus it's more personal. It's helping companies that are 50-person companies that can't pay my $15,000 or $20,000 fee, and say, hey, we got $2,500 and could you do this? And hey, if I'm hanging out and having beers, and why not? And I'm not as worried about my speaking brand right now. So I'm thinking of mixing some of those things in. It's going to be a lot about what happens. Like, does it mushroom and start happening? I probably won't turn them down. Am I going to chase the big gigs? Probably not.
Right.
But again, things change every day. So I
Never say
can't
never.
say that I won't. What I'm more interested in is being on advisory boards, working with companies that I believe in what they're doing. There's a lot of things coming to me from people I know and relationships I have, and I'm talking to two companies right now that I love what they're doing. One is in the not-for-profit space, and they're developing a software, and the company name is Impactica, and I love them. And I'll probably be doing something with them. I'm talking to, I'm not going to name it right now, but I'm talking to a major company that I just signed my first one-off deal with, but we're talking about an annual deal where I will be speaking in a lot of their offices. I will be talking about return on relationship, how to engage their audiences, because they are doing a major shift in their focus and brand and who they are. That's costing them major money. They're a major, very, very large company. And one of the senior people there is a relationship I've been developing over the years for years. And I adore this man. He's just one of the best human beings in the world. So I'm hoping that'll happen. But I'm looking much more closely at what companies do and what they offer and who they're helping, more than just, oh, this is a gig and maybe they could make a lot of money and I could join their advisory board and blah,
Right.
blah, blah. And, that's what I'm trying to do. But, this past year and a half, I took a hit. Totally upfront. I really thought the markets were going to collapse. So I divested of most of my investments. And of course the markets have soared. So don't ever take my investment advice. I was totally off. So I missed that whole upside. As you know, I've been investing in this. So I took a lot of that capital and I've been buying units in this building. I had never done real estate in my life other than buying homes and buying places I lived in. It sucks if you're used to what we're used to. Being in a business, being able to generate sales. You wake up today and you're short money, you work harder. That's not the way this works. You got to wait for cities. You got to wait for permits. You got to worry about the hurricane that's coming in, or God forbid, the building that collapsed, or new rules and laws and shortages of distribution shortages because of pandemics. So, I'm sitting here and I'm bleeding because I can't do anything with my units yet because I'm waiting on permits. I'm waiting on delivery of equipment. Now, by the way, I talk to real estate guys and they go, yeah, that's the business. Like, dude,
It is.
yeah, but, and by the way, if I was 40 or 39 and doing this, I'd say, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm learning this whole new field. I could have a whole new branch of what I do with this. I'm 63. I ain't doing it again.
Fantastic.
Well,
Ted,
maybe I will. Hell, we can all work a lot later these days, who knows? But it's become a full-time job, like in many ways. Obviously, I'm still doing all my other and I'm still posting every day. I'm working with startups. I'm working with my business partner on new on prevailing paths of purchase, and how do we take a startup e-commerce company and help them generate sales without the huge budgets. And we're working with a few different companies, and that's fun. So who knows what's going to be next.
You are a powerhouse. Unbelievable. There must be something to this vegan living, I'll tell you.
Well, I will tell you that every day I go to bed thinking I sucked and I didn't accomplish enough. And that's something that I fight with every day, because I'll say, man, I didn't get enough of a workout in, and they'll be like, oh my God, we saw your Instagram. You rode your bike, you swam laps, you took out your kayak. I'm like, yeah, but I never got into my gym. And part of that is, I want to make sure the audience takes this the right way. I'm not bragging at all. I'm actually being self-depreciating in that I don't think I think a lot of us go through this. We don't think we do enough, and we try to live up to expectations that are impossible to live up to. And most often they're not others' expectations of us, they're our own expectations. So I just want to tell everybody, try to give yourself a break. Like I said, I'm trying to find my comfort zone. I want to be more accepting of what I do and how my days go, and like my business partner says, dude, take a nap. They're awesome. And I'm like, take a nap. Like I wake up and go, oh my God, that was like an hour. You know what I could have done in an hour? How many emails I could have sent, or how many posts I could have made, or how many laps I could have swam. So be more accepting of yourself and be more accepting of others, and be good to people.
You remind me of something that a school teacher put in one of my school reports, which is Keith sets himself very low standards, which he consistently fails to meet. But so anyway, all right, Ted, well, look, we're coming to the last bit of it, and I promise I'll let you go and you can get a rest after that. But I mean, what's the easiest way for people to reach you if they want to get hold of you online? Is there a preferred method of communication, or like you say, anything is whatever the customer wants, right?
It all depends on what it's for. If you need immediate and quick attention, text me. I always watch my texts. It's a habit from when my daughters were younger and they weren't around a lot, and I didn't want to miss when they needed me for something. So I always like during this, on the video on this, if you're watching the video, or you might have noticed, I'll tap my wrist because it's an Apple Watch, and there's a text coming through, and I just want to make sure it's not something urgent. Email me if it's something you want me to follow up on, tedrubin@gmail.com, because I use email as my way of keeping myself disciplined and making sure I get done what I need to get done. If you message me you can message me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, but understand it's not the best place for follow-up. You can get my attention there. Actually, I had a 4:00 meeting. I forgot about that. You can get it's okay. You can get my attention there, but if you want me to follow up, if it's something important, email me. And by the way, you can also call me, 516-270-5511. I actually pick up the phone. You can leave a voicemail. My voicemail is not full. I don't leave it full. You can find me on every platform. I'm Ted Rubin everywhere. And you can Google me and find out about anything you want, but reach out. I promise you, if you reach out to me, I'll reach back. And if it's a matter of how's the best way to communicate, I will tell you. So just listen.
Ted, finally, the final three questions that we'd love to ask all our guests in terms of switching off and stuff like that. I sent you through three important questions, which we'd love to give to all our guests. A desert island disc, a platter that matters to you.
Now we're talking about a song or an album?
I would go with a song.
The song that matters to me the most, and that I put on when I want to feel good, is James Taylor's Sweet Baby. James, you got Sweet Baby James in my head. James Taylor's Shower the People. I mean, that's just a song that is near and dear to my heart. I'm a huge James Taylor fan. My daughters used to say, "Oh my God, him again!" Like, because that's all I played. And I can listen to him all day long.
Fantastic. And do you play any instruments, just out of interest?
I did as a kid, but I didn't really have a talent for it. I'm a little tone deaf. So it was way too hard work for me. So I stopped.
Fair enough. There is a touch of the James Taylor about you in terms of the certainly with the hat on as well. Definitely get it. And a book you'd recommend for the Zoom bookshelf? Got one?
Well, I've got to tell you, when you say book, it's so hard for me because I am very prolific in my in my reading and my Audible listening to audiobooks. So, picking one is so hard, but if I had to pick one right now and something that I think is timely, I think everybody should read. I'm reading from this because I want to make sure to get the title right. Past, The Origins of Our Discontent by Elizabeth Wilkerson. It's such an important read about caste, class structure, and endemic racism. And it goes beyond. This is not black versus white. This is about poor people. This is about the caste system in India. It's about the way these things have developed. And I just think people really need to open their eyes to it. Now, there's many books I could recommend, and there's certainly more fun books I could recommend. But that's just something that I think is important if I have to pick one.
Wow. Okay. Well, that sounds good. That's definitely one that we'll flag up, and we'll put a link for it on the fuelpodcast.com. And I asked you for 3 words for for the what 3 words part, and you put forward, what was it? Dad, friend, and hope. Hope. Oh, didn't come back with one. Hang on, let's do that. See where we get to. But putting that in there put you near in Pakistan. So there we go. So that's what we'll do for that. But
I recently listened to a book about Pakistan, trying to wrap my arms around a little understanding of that.
Talking about the caste system as well, I think that's quite appropriate. Don't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, Ted, what can I say? I've really enjoyed talking with you. Fantastic. Thank you so much indeed for all your time. I know you're really busy, but you're very inspiring. And I hope that the one takeaway people can get from the show is that everybody's got to keep putting it out there, right? Just being present, be in the moment, be real. So anyway, good luck with all your real estate ventures. I hope that we can. Yeah, go on.
I'm sorry. Can I leave your audience with one last thought? I just want to share one last wrap up thing that I say all the time that I want them to take away from this, that relationships are like muscle tissue. The more you engage them, the stronger and more valuable they become.
Oh, beautiful. Ted, thank you for everything that you do for all the marketing and sales community. It's great. It's really good. And I've really enjoyed talking to you. Again, I knew this would be a banger. So thank you so much. To take great care of yourself and for your family, and all the best, Ted. Great chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you so much. It was a great show and I love talking to you. And let's see if we can do it again. And also let's see if we can get Return on Relationship republished, because it's so relevant for our time. My thanks also go to co-producer Donna Smith, to Jeremy Davis, the Master of Laughter, to the Prospectors, the band, and also to Matt at Ouijibo Design in downtown Indianapolis for all his IT support. Remember to like and subscribe to this show. Visit thefuelpodcast.com for all the show notes and for previous shows that we've had. And send us a message. We love to hear from you. You can reach me on LinkedIn or by email. But for now, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Fuel, the podcast for the new business curious. And really, shouldn't that include you?